Hello, everybody. I'm Cody Troyer.
And I'm Brent Gaisford.
And we are the Hugonauts. This time we are talking about the best time travel books.
Yeah, we read more than 60 of the most highly regarded time travel books that are out there. This will be really fun.
Yeah, and what Brent's not telling you is that he beat me by 4 books when we did the accounting, which, champion. Next time, we are going to be talking about Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell, so don't miss that. And to expound a little bit upon what we're doing this time, when we started reading all of these time travel books, we realized there's a lot that could be like outside of maybe what you'd consider traditional time travel. Like, what about manipulating time in a kind of a more real theoretical sense? What about arc ships? What about all this other stuff? So we're going to kind of go through in by subgenre that we've invented of time travel. And then at the end, we're going to do our personal top 3 and count those down.
But before we do that, this episode is sponsored by Maya, Seed Takes Root by Anand Gandhi and Zain Maman.
This sci-fiction fantasy is on Kickstarter, where it's hit 1,500% of its funding goals, and the audiobook will be read by Hugo Weaving. This is the story of Yache and Ein, a shapeshifter, which feels magical, yet is rooted deeply in evolutionary logic like the rest of the lore. That's the beauty of Maya.
The book is full of elegant twists that reinvent your favorite tropes and is one you can't afford to miss. Check out Maya on Kickstarter.
All right, let's start with our first subgenre, which is like fantasy, science fictional universes, but like it's not time travel like on the real world, like the traditional sense. We'll end with that.
Yeah, there's nobody time traveling to like our time or from our time to some other time. There's no part of it that's in any world that is recognizable to us. It's a totally other place. Could be a sci-fi place or a fantasy place, but it's like time travel is just part of this other thing.
Yes. So what's our first one?
I'm going to start with Night Watch by Terry Pratchett, which is set in his Discworld. It's one of his Discworld books. If you hadn't read any Terry Pratchett before, I truly I can't recommend it enough. They're so funny. It's not a contiguous series. You can pick up any book from Discworld and just read it. But they're all set in this one fantasy city. And it's kind of like a fantasy mashup. It's kind of got everything. Anyway, Night Watch is one of the stories that it follows basically a police officer who time travels back. He falls through a wizard situation. Anyway, he time travels back.
Wizard hole.
He time travels back into his own past to a very like tough time in the city when there was a dictator in charge who had like secret police, and he kind of has to step in and fulfill this role that he didn't realize when he was younger was him, this like mentor figure for himself at this very tough time for the city. So yeah, it's insanely good. I like literally couldn't put it down. Over the weekend that I was reading it, my wife was like, "You really love that book, huh? You can't stop reading it." I was like, "Yeah, it's so good. It's so good."
That's fun. I can't wait to read it. That's not one of the ones I read. But one of the ones we both read is the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. Can't not mention it. So many manipulations of time. It also could, in theory, be set in the traditional world because we see a lot of America from the 70s through the 2000s, as well as all these other fantasy realms. Roland, the protagonist character, if you're unfamiliar with the series, is on an epic quest to find the Dark Tower, and he is the gunslinger. He's just insanely good with cowboy revolvers. It's Stephen King's like magnum opus mashup of Western fantasy, science fiction, and all of his other books and stories. This is like the central universe of all of the Stephen King universe. It's so I guess the universal center, whatever. But so good, and so many interesting experiments with time and the passage of time and travel back and forward. Yeah,
I think that was the first one of the first books you ever recommended to me, like in our friendship, like many years ago when we were in high school. You're like, you got to read The Dark Tower. Yeah. Well, you're right. They're so good. So anyway, yeah. Okay. What's
next?
Well, yeah. No, well, you tell me what's next.
Oh, back to back. Right. This would be Fall of Hyperion by Dan Simmons, which is the second book in the Hyperion cantos, the duology. That's Hyperion and then Fall of Hyperion. The first is formatted like the Canterbury Tales. It's a space opera with many characters coming to this weird planet Hyperion to go through the time labyrinth, to go on a pilgrimage and find find what's there. They've and explore why the mysterious, one of the best sci-fi villains ever, the Shrike, or monsters, I suppose, is coming back out of the labyrinth again. And Fall of Hyperion deals more directly with time travel. It's really integral to the plot. How we're moving, like the events of the past of the characters are influencing the events we've already seen and influencing future events, and how it's all coming to a head. So it's a really, I mean, such a great series, one of the best all time, and we could put it on this list, so we did.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, any chance we get to talk about Hyperion is a good one. And then there's one we should just briefly mention, right?
Yeah, just a glancing blow off the Void trilogy by Peter F. Hamilton. Really interesting use of time travel there, in a fantasy setting. But I won't say too much more about that because I don't want to spoil anything. So just another good series to hit. All right, what should tell us, Brent, about time travel by way of science?
These are books where things happen that actually might be physically possible. In general, if you didn't already know this, hate to spoil it for you, time travel backwards really looks impossible for sure, no matter what you do.
It's not looking good.
However, time travel forward is a real thing you can do, because as you approach relativistic speeds, or I guess one of these books uses cryosleep, but you can basically live in a time that's far, far forward of your birth subjective time, right? So this is a series of books that do that. The first one we want to talk about is Tau Zero by Poul Anderson, which we both read. And we actually both really don't like, but wanted to talk about it because it has this idea in it that is a real thing. This is a real thing that could happen. And it's just such an interesting idea. So I'll just tell you about the thing. The closer you get to the speed of light, the more and more and more time must distort for you compared to the rest of the universe, because light always has to appear to you to be moving at the same speed, right? Which means as you go faster and faster, time gets dilated super crazily. Anyway, the down arrow of this is if you could just accelerate forever, you in your human lifetime could cross literally any distance. Like you could cross the entire universe 14 billion years across. Well, we don't really know how big, but anyway, it's at least that big because that's how old it is. Because you can get that time dilation dialed so crazily if you can keep accelerating. And so in practice, it's not like a useful thing, because by the time, let's say you went on a scouting mission and came back, well, 28 billion years would have passed. So there'd be no Earth when you come back. So there's really there's no use for this idea. You can't do anything really on truly cosmic scales, but it's such a crazy, interesting idea. To think that in your lifetime you could travel literally infinite distance and therefore infinite time. And it's just, I don't know, just blows my mind. So this book is about that.
Yeah, and I think the execution of the idea is done well, and it was worth reading still to see the follow through. But essentially, it's a group of 50 scientists who are on a ship, and they end up having to interact with this idea of getting their tau factor, which is the tau is the character in the equation, closer to zero, which means the time dilation ramps up for them. Unfortunately, it's a lot about their relationships on the ship, and that part is
so
quite
badly
dull.
Done.
They're not,
and just cringy. Honestly, just humans aren't like that. And at the end, this guy saves the day in just the suckiest way. Yeah, but anyway, it really does illustrate that it makes the science come home to you and helps you understand it in a cool way. So it sort of it helps you understand relativity. But anyway, I guess what we're saying here is, you out there listening to this, please write a great science fiction story about using this idea. We need one.
Rework Tau Zero. Yeah. The next one on the list is Story of Your Life by none other than Ted Chiang, which is graced many of our lists, of course, one of my favorite of all time. And it is interesting for the way the story that the movie Arrival is based on. Interesting in the way that it convinced me about the possibility of living in the fourth, being able to see the fourth dimension as a living being. And it's all about language, fourth dimensional beings, aliens coming in contact and trying to communicate their language to us, but their language relies on living in the fourth dimension. So it's it's really interesting about linguistics, and also the time travel elements are very emotional, family oriented, and just a really crazy idea executed really well, like all of Ted's stories.
Yeah, absolutely love that one. Yeah, if you haven't read Ted Chiang, he has two books, which are collections basically of his short. He only writes novellas and short stories. One of those collections is called Story of Your Life. It's amazing. The other one's called Exhalation. Like everyone should read both. Every story in them is insane. So good.
Yeah, and then finally we had to bring on one arc ship, right?
Well, we should do Forevermore first, right? By
oh, sorry, I missed that. Yep.
By Haldeman. Which this is similar to the idea of Tau Zero, but it's a better done book, but it just takes that idea less far. It's about a war between humanity and aliens. Joe Haldeman was a Vietnam War survivor. He got drafted and went and fought, and so it's a really interesting book because it's both very much about the Vietnam War, but also a super well done like military sci-fi combat book. And also really helps you viscerally understand this idea that like any interstellar journey is always a one-way trip. Even if you can come back to Earth, if you're going to go somewhere that's dozens of light years away, that's possible on your subjective time without you aging very much. But by the time you come back, even if any of the people you know is still alive, everything's going to be different. And more than likely, everyone you know is going to be dead if you go very far at all. And so it just really brings home that idea of like interstellar travel definitionally is time travel. So anyway, yeah, that deserves a spot on this list for that reason.
Yeah, and that's why we did this as a separate subgenre, because we're technically time traveling, but it's not as fun. It's not the way we want it to be in the fantasy way. That's why like the traditional time travel stories are more interesting, because this is like, yes, you are traveling through time via relativity, and it gives you no value, and in fact probably would be terrible for you.
Yeah, well, these are all really good books, but yeah, the time travel is a bummer always.
Right. I'm just saying, yeah, exactly. Like the real version of time travel. And then finally we have, like I said, arc ship, Children of Time, Adrian Tchaikovsky, the non-spider half of the book, which I also love, with Holden, our gentleman who is
Earth has gone to shit. Basically, it's ruined, and so they launch a generation ship, right?
And they, on an eventual collision course for somewhere where humanity can live, but some of the people have to stay under for a very long time to make it there, and he's one of them. So his chapters are him jumping through, waking up 10 minutes later, decades later in time, and just seeing how things have advanced on the ship and changed and what they found. And it's a really compelling version of the arc ship idea, although it's probably the least scientific out of the science side, because it's a cryosleep dependent one.
Yeah, cryosleep, the jury's out on cryosleep. It might be possible, but in general, if you ever poke around, there's a really great website out there, a Project Row, and also there's something with Starship in it. Anyway, there's some really good websites out there that have like the science of a lot of stuff you read in sci-fi. Anyway, generation ships, just by their nature, seem like they're not really going to work that well. It seems easier to accelerate to relativistic speed and get there fast, rather than having a machine with no resources work for like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years in a row. So we'll see if we ever do generation ships, but it seems like it's physically possible, so we put it on.
And they're fun too.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's our next little subgenre we invented, loopers. Looping time travel, because it doesn't feel like you would call it time travel, but it is. It's when people reliving the same day over and over again. These two
Groundhog Day is in the vein of.
Yes, exactly. That I suppose that's the archetypal form culturally. I read both of these. The first one is The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton, which is a really fun murder mystery book about someone who's stuck in a time loop on a Victorian estate and is having to figure out why everyone on the grounds is so evil and what's going on with this murder and why is he inhabiting different bodies each day. I won't say too much more about it because it's a murder mystery, but it was really fun and I enjoyed it a lot. The next one is All You Need Is Kill by Hiroshi Sakurazaka, which is also what the movie Edge of Tomorrow is based on. But this novel it's short, It's good. It's totally different than the movie. I think the movie is better personally, but I also enjoyed the book. But Edge of Tomorrow is one of my favorite sci-fi movies. So
Such a good movie. Yeah, if you have not seen it, Emily Blunt, Tom Cruise, it's insanely entertaining and fun. Yeah.
yeah, and it's about a soldier in a future war against robots reliving the same day over and over again. After they, or not even the same day. Every time they die, they go back to the same point in time and they have to start over. It's kind of like a roguelike video game, honestly. It's like, okay, die right out of the gates, have to learn to get better. Die 2 days later, have to learn to get better. And it's about this character learning how to navigate, the same few days to try to stop this one day of the robot invasion, and meeting the hero, head of most important warrior in the force, who is a woman he's falling in love with. It's a good novel. Movie's a little better, but still worth a read.
Interesting. You thought the movie was better.
Yeah, I think it's a lot different, and I think it has more of an emotional core. The novel's interesting and good too, but it's a little more like reads like a video game to me.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, Tom Cruise is hard not to like. He's totally insane and insanely likable both at the same time. He's just so talented.
Yeah,
Anyway.
yeah, that's okay. Yeah, fair enough. Plus, it just looks real cool.
Yeah, really well done sci-fi, like fighting combat movie. Yeah.
Yeah. We won't go too far into movies because weirdly, I think movies are where
Yeah, there's kind of
maybe
like
the best time travel
good
stuff is.
Yeah, we both came away with that impression. It was like really hard to find really good books. I think it's maybe because books kind of like make you think a little bit, and if you think too hard about time travel, it kind of stops working pretty quickly. Like I should have mentioned this earlier. One of the things I loved about Night Watch, they didn't bother to explain it at all. Like the people who know about time travel, as they're trying to tell the main character, they're just like, they're constantly yelling at each other, like, you're just lying to him. That's not how it works. And I'm like, who cares? We just need to get him moving along through this. He doesn't need to know how it works.
Yeah.
It's great. It's very well done.
Which I think is the right way. I mean, because we talk about time travel sometimes in the show, and how it's always like for me at least, it's if it works type thing. Like if you like it, then great. And if you don't, it's going to be really obvious and you're going to see plot holes all over the place. But the best way to like it is just to enjoy it. And so sometimes like having no explanation is better than trying to say, oh, it works in all these cool ways. And like, no, it doesn't at all. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it never does.
Which speaking of, the next one is kids' books, which we had to include because they're two great novels from the list. But
yeah, these are for children though. Like if you are an adult, like these are not for you. This is like if you want to get a book for your kid, or your kid is into this kind of stuff. Like these are children's books, but they're good time.
Yeah, you could still. I still liked here. I'll just do that. I still liked Wrinkle in Time.
If we weren't making an episode about time travel, would you like recommend it to adults though?
Probably not, and I probably wouldn't have liked it if I hadn't read it as a kid and reread it now. You know what I mean? Like there's a nostalgia factor. Wrinkle in Time is about a little girl whose professor dad who messes with time travel goes missing, and she has to travel to a planet very far away to get there with the help of some witches and time bending. The analogy they use, I will say that Wrinkle in Time has like taught me this analogy about space time, which has lasted and helped my brain deal with more complicated space time stuff. So it is valuable in that way. But the classic analogy of like poke a hole, like draw two dots and on a piece of paper and fold them together, and they're close. Like bending of space time is time travel. That's how you do it. So it's got some stuff there. But yeah, it's definitely for kids.
Yeah, for sure. I have very fond memories of it too, but I didn't reread it for this. So anyway, I was curious to hear what you thought of as an adult. I also did one of these. I remembered this book from when I was a kid called Running Out of Time by Margaret Peterson Haddix, and decided to reread it. And the reason I thought it was worth a reread is because it's another one where it's like real and possible. There's a lot of mysteries in the book, but I'm just going to tell you the first one, which you learn in my head. I was like, ooh, that's a big first mystery. And it turns out it's like in the first 6 pages because it's a children's book. And so there's like something every 6 pages. But anyway, it's a young girl who's like 12 or something who thinks it's the 1840s. And then kids start getting really sick. And her mom tells her like, hey, it's actually 1995. We're like historical reenactors, but they won't let us leave anymore. And they stopped letting us tell you kids what's going on. So you need to like escape and get us some help. We need medicine or these kids are going to die. And so she's like time traveling to our time from the 1840s. And it's really gripping and fun, just like a really fun adventure story. I I will definitely like, give it to my kid when they're at the right age. So anyway, if you have a kid in your life.
Awesome. Okay, and before we get to the traditional time travel books, we want to give one final shout out to this episode's sponsor, Maya, Seed Takes Root. If Peter Watt's Blindsight ever made you question the very purpose of consciousness, or if Ursula K. Le Guin's The Dispossessed got you wrestling with freedom and solidarity, then Maya, Seed Takes Root is for you. Maya's live on Kickstarter now.
So when we say traditional time travel, this is people are traveling either to or from, broadly speaking, like our time. The 20th century, the 21st century is one of the two destinations at least. So what's first on the list? What do you love?
Kindred by Octavia Butler. Hard not to put this on the list. I mean, it's the top of this pile, really. It's a really excellent novel about a woman who, black woman in the 1970s who just wakes up one day in a plantation. She lives in California, wakes up on a plantation in Virginia, and saves a white boy from drowning, and then the parents try to, kill her. They're mad, and she gets transposed back to her apartment in San Francisco, and she goes back and forth a number of times through the novel for extended periods of time. Her husband gets involved, and the ostensible reason is that she's connected to her ancestor, who's a white slave owner, who's this boy who she goes back to save from various situations, and has to grapple with his treatment of her and having to keep him safe and alive so she can eventually be born, even though he's a awful slave owner. And it's a really interesting moral tale, and just kind of a fun time travel novel in general.
Sweet, yeah. And always good to have an excuse to read more Octavia Butler.
Yeah, Octavia is so good.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, the next one I'll do is Lightning by Dean Koontz, which this is the book. This is a thriller. It's straightforward. It's exciting. This is the book that I thought we were going to find 25 of. This is the book that I had in my head as a time travel book. So I won't, there's a couple unexpected twists, but it starts with this man appearing and interfering to save the life of this young girl. He stops this drunk doctor from going to deliver her. And you sort of get the feeling that if that drunk doctor had gone, the baby would have died. And then or had problems. And then he shows up later when she's 8 and kills a mugger who's threatening to rape and kill her. And so it's this cool protector thing. And anyway, so it proceeds the way from there. But it was written in the 80s. It's actually written 4 years after Terminator came out. And it also involves time travel with a bunch of lightning happening. It's really a lot like Terminator, actually, kind of. So that was bold of Dean Koontz to do it, but they veer apart after the beginning, I would say. But really well done. It was just a super fun, anyway, it's the thing that I expected to find for time travel. I really enjoyed it along the way. There's no big metaphysical messages or whatever. The beginning is funny and has really good character work. It falls off in the middle, but the end was great again and just really exciting. It was fun. It was a fun time travel story.
Yeah, but you said it's the best thing that you were expecting a lot of.
Yeah. I'm glad I found it right at the end of us getting ready to shoot this. I felt like I was looking for that book for so long. I'm glad I finally found it.
Yeah, so that's the one if you have the same proclivities as Brent. Another one, how could we not? 11/22/63 by Stephen King, which the show is also based on. Man finds a time travel gate, or he's shown it by kind of an acquaintance of his, to go back in time to 58, and see what happens. And the guy gives him kind of a rundown. His acquaintance friend is dying, and he gives him a rundown of how the time travel works, because he can't complete his mission since he's dying of lung cancer of saving JFK from assassination, which requires living for 5 years in the past. This one's also maybe one of the quintessential ones I was looking for. It's a real past, a historical context we're familiar with. It's all the ideas you think about, bringing back sports scores so you can get rich gambling, that kind of, the Back to the Future too. And like what it would be like living in the past as somebody from 2010. And it ends up being, you know, like most of King's novels, it's more about the character and who he finds and what he finds of himself on the way than it is about the action. It's pretty long, and it's more about him and these other characters he meets along the way and how he settles into life in that time period. And then it goes off the rails pretty hard, but I did love the novel still.
Okay, so the beginning was he didn't quite stick the landing though.
I don't know if he did or he didn't. I don't want to talk too much about it.
Okay.
I just was like, I just had to throw that out there for people who are familiar with it or have read it, just to see if people are
For
like
sure.
Agree or disagree.
Okay.
What's our other?
Well, I wanted to ask one question. I should know this.
Yeah.
I'm betraying my age here. I assume 11/22/63 is that the date that Kennedy was shot?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, all right. Next book on the list. So this is actually the book that started us down this path of saying we have to make the best time travel book, because somebody actually on the Discord recommended to us The First 15 Lives of Harry August by Claire North. We both loved it. And then we're like, okay, well, we gotta make an episode around time travel. So it's about it's sort of like Groundhog Day, but it's with his entire life. Every time he dies, he wakes up as he's born again, but in the past when he was really born. And then by the time he's 3 or 4, he remembers everything. And so then he's, you know, a child with all these memories and trying to live it out. Anyway, the thing that makes this really interesting is there's other people like this too. It's about 1 in a million people have this thing. They call themselves Ouroborans, that's the snake who eats its own tail. And so they have this really interesting society, and there's some really interesting rules about it, which if you think too hard about them, they'll kind of start to like don't do that. Don't think too hard about it.
Well, it's fun. It makes fun narrative sense. That's what's good about the rules of this one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it has this thing where because he and other characters are reborn, they can do these things that require like lifetimes. And just that idea of like working on something for so long is really interesting. The things they're working on are really big and important and scary, and there's a big bad guy, and it's just super well done. I don't know. I loved it. What else would you say about it?
There's an amazing bad guy. I mean, just one of the classic like really good real person who you also like want to like, but he's evil. But it's and then I just like everything. It's all the fun like fantasies about time travel, right? It's like, okay, you get to live again when you die, and you don't have memories of when you're an infant, because that would be terrible. But when you're a little kid, you have memories, but you have to like figure out workarounds because you're a little kid who's lived for hundreds of years. So like each time you get better, again, like the roguelike thing, you get better at like doing your childhood and figuring out how to get out of it as soon as possible. And then you make these other friends who've lived a long time. There was an interesting exploration into like different people and what they did with their different lives based on their dispositions. Like,
yeah, all the characters.
There's that one hedonist who's great. There's one guy who's just like a soldier who's in the middle. Harry himself is a great character. And there's a lot of emotion in the novel too for a novel that's like so much. Yeah. It's really
he's like
emotional.
Super philosophical and emotional. He's like, it's like anyway. Oh, and I wanted to mention that there's a book just like this called Replay by Ken Grimwood, which has the exact same thing happening, and it was written well before. So we read that as well, and it's decent, but the first 15 lives of Harry August is just what. It's just executed better. There's a lot of really similar things about them.
It's definitely one of the more special ones on this list. If you're only going to read a few, we both gave it like a 5 out of 5. It's really literary and compelling and fun and interest. It's just an excellent novel.
Yeah,
definitely a standout here. Another one that I liked is The Rise and Fall of Dodo by Neal Stephenson and Nicole Galland, who I believe did this with Stephenson because she's a great historical fiction author. So Stephenson needs someone who really understood like realistic time periods. It's essentially a government agency, deep state, surprise, surprise, guy approaches this linguist at Harvard, asking to bring her onto a project translating these documents, and then she's met by a witch who claims to have lived for hundreds of years, who tells her what this project is trying to do. And the core conceit is that magic existed in the world for real until photography came around, but photography collapses the wave function of magic. So magic evaporated entirely from the world in 1851 when a picture of the solar eclipse was taken, because it was big enough to like wave function out the whole world of its magic. So DODO is trying to use some lingering magic. It's a department, agency of diachronic operation, something, to make a time machine, to send agents back to various points in the past for research and using and making magic to bring back to the future, essentially to further America's goals. And there's a lot of really fun magic, a lot of really realistic period time travel. Stephenson's always great. And then some fun conflict between witches and the government. And you don't really know who's the good guy, the bad guy. And also the form is really interesting. It's like journals and then office memos. It's essentially like the idea of the form is that it was taken from a DODO server before DODO went away. So it's it's all these mixed media. It's told through mixed media, and there's chunks missing and stuff to make it more mysterious. And I believe they wrap it up in a sequel that Nicole Galland wrote by herself, which I have not read, but I will.
Okay, sweet. That's good.
I also really like that one, if you couldn't tell.
Yeah. Yeah. I always like, I haven't read a Stephenson in a while, so maybe this will be it. Okay, next we're going to do Time and Again by Jack Finney, which is an interesting book for a bunch of reasons. So I first read this when I was in high school. One of my parents got it for me. This is a book that was like wildly popular in the 1970s. And I always think it's fun to read books that were like hyper popular in the past, particularly like before I was born, because I feel like they give you some insight into like kind of what people were thinking about at the time, that this could like blow up so big. Like, so anyway, this is that kind of book. It was wildly popular in the 70s, and it is about a man. It's a government project to time travel to the past, and a man who succeeds, and time travels back to the 1880s in New York. And it's meticulously researched with like real newspapers and stuff. And there's a bunch of photos which are actually from the 1880s. It's actually called like an illustrated novel. And I told you about this, Cody. I was like, hey, there's this book that's great, but you shouldn't read it because on audiobook it's not going to work. But then you like didn't know which one I was talking about. So anyway, you listened to this and you thought it sucked, right?
Was the one of the two books I have not finished in the last maybe my whole life. I usually I make myself finish stuff. I don't know why. That's a separate issue. We don't have to go into it. I did not finish this. I thought it was cool that I thought the realism of the 1800s was really cool, of 1800s New York, and really detailed, and that part was kind of cool. But I just kind of lost the plot at some point, and it's really funny because the reason I read this, you had told me that a while ago when we were starting this project, but you didn't tell me the title of the book. I read this because in the afterword of 11/22/63, Stephen King says it's the best time travel novel ever written and that he misses his friend Jack Finney. So I was like, oh, great, a lead on another one. I'll read it. And then it wasn't until today that we connected that this was the one you were talking about, because I saw it on the list and I was like, what? That? It was terrible. So I guess you really have to read that one, and that's got to be physical media only.
Yeah, for sure. Well, the photos are like super central to it, and there's a ton of them, and there's also newspaper clippings. Some of I won't tell you what the climax of the novel is, but it's a real thing that happened in the 1880s in New York, and there's all these like, woodcut illustrations from newspapers in New York when that thing happened. And the other thing I'll say about it is like, it's really stood the test. Like, I remembered some key plot points 25 years later, or 20 years later, which is, that means it really stuck in my mind, or there's a lot of really good things about it. So anyway, yeah, interesting one. Do not listen on audiobook.
I guess not. Yeah, I will say I really liked the beginning, and I was like, all right. And then it just like kind of kept going and going. So weird, but very funny that's how it happened between us.
Yeah, I saw it. You had it in the list of duds, and I was like, what do you mean duds? I'm putting that back in. Anyway,
Yeah, we're not going to talk about the duds, but you might be able to guess based on what we elided from the list that you're expecting.
For sure.
Okay, how about another Stephen King that you read?
Okay. So Life of Chuck, which is a Stephen King novella. I just saw this movie this year. They just made a movie, Life of Chuck. And I adored the movie. So I figured, hey, I should read the novella. The novella is pretty good, but honestly, the movie is better. It's the same length. The audiobook was it like, 100 minutes long, and that's how long the movie is. So it's like scene for scene, and they just filled it all in and not just filled it in, they improved the dialogue, and like, I don't know, they just had a team of professionals working on the thing to shine it up, So anyway, the movie's incredible. I really can't recommend it highly enough. Stephen King's always great. But yeah, Life of Chuck is about seeing your own future and then how you deal with that. And there's a lot that's really interesting metaphysically about that, but it's also just like, I don't think it's spoilery to say the thing that happens at all of our lives at the end is that you die. And this is just a little bit more close to home for these characters. But it's like, what does it mean to live a good life knowing the way it's going to end? And I think that's something that's really important for all of us to think about, because that's what we're all doing here.
Memento Mori.
Yeah.
It's a core principle to, well, at least I like to practice it. But you don't have to, I suppose. Similar here, we have, well, I guess similar in that vein, but Slaughterhouse 5 by Kurt Vonnegut, which is just a beloved classic. Probably
So
most of you have read it, but it kind of falls in the traditional camp because it's time travel around, the World War II private Billy Pilgrim, as he's captured in Dresden, just like Kurt Vonnegut was, but then he goes on a number of time jumps through his life. His linear life is a lot of time jumps through the actual camp and the war, to his life later in life in New England, and his childhood, and then also on this planet Tralfamadore, and learning to live. He
gets abducted by aliens, he says.
Right. Yeah, he claims he's the narrator. It's first person narration diary. There's a lot of unreliable narrator, but that's part of it and why it's good. But it's a great metaphor for, and his intent really was like a metaphor for PTSD, and like how you can relive parts of your life in different areas of your life, and how it can come back. How those memories and the feelings of being there can come back to you in a visceral way. And also it has one of the greatest lines in the history of writing, "So it goes," which is the refrain from Tralfamadorian spiritualism, because the Tralfamadorians see time kind of like the aliens in Ted Chiang. They live in the fourth dimension, and so they don't really think of time in the same way as we do, and they teach him their spiritualism that Billy Pilgrim brings back to the rest of his life, and just such a good novel, and the reason it's the taut Kurt Vonnegut makes sense. Do you have anything to say about? I want to give you a chance on Vonnegut before.
I loved it. This is the first Vonnegut I'd read in quite a while. And this is one where I think I first read it when I was a teenager, and I remember it being good, but now when I reread it, I was like, oh, this is like masterful. It's so fun. It's so entertaining. And he's just such a good writer that it's these huge ideas, and he has, he writes in like such terse, brief writing, and he's a satirist, right? He's making fun of things, but like he's never he's not hitting over the head with anything. It just feels like it feels like you're hanging out in a room with Kurt Vonnegut, and he's just really funny in the way he delivers things. He's just incredible.
Yes.
And like this is like sort of an anti-war book, but it's more just like, it's not like he's like, we shouldn't have war. It's more like, this is just what war actually is, and it's not glamorous. So like you can decide what you think about war, but it's not the thing that you think that it is. Regardless, you can make up your own mind about what the thing that it actually is means to you, but just like, here's some real stuff, and just, anyway, he's incredible.
Yes. Yes. And I will also just going to throw in Timequake real quick, which is one of his later novels. Um, Ostensibly, it's about a Timequake event where people go back in time 10 years in the past and they relive time, but it's a deterministic time travel novel. They can't make any changes, so they just relive their lives for a decade. But the main character is the only one who wakes up at the end without complete apathy and ennui after a decade of living through their lives being done to them, having to make decisions again and um not know the future. But it's also an autobiography, and it also includes a lot of his other work. Timequake may be my favorite Vonnegut, but you have to have read all of his other works to really get the full effect, because it's so self-referential. But just had to mention that one briefly too, because it is time related and another great Vonnegut.
He's like one of the goats. There's just no doubt about it. Okay, great. And then last one that we're going to have on our like sort of traditional list here before we each give our top three is The Time Traveler's Wife by Audrey Niffenegger. This book I was expecting, I read Ministry of Time recently, which is like a time travel romance. And I was like, kind of thought that wasn't very good. And I was, I thought it was fine. And so I was kind of like not really looking forward to Time Traveler's Wife. Time Traveler's Wife is incredible. It's so good. It's an incredible romance, first of all, but it's also like such an interesting, the first half especially. So what's happening to the time traveler is that he's sort of unmoored in time, and periodically, without him being able to control it, he just appears naked at a time. Sometimes it's his own past. Like he ends up having to revisit his mother's death many times. His mother died when he was 5. And then later in his life, he realizes that like all the people who are around that accident at the time is him from the future. Like being like, there's a time he was in the bushes. There's a time he was in another car. Like he just sort of that was like an emotionally intense thing for him. So he keeps going back to it. But anyway, another thing that happens is he goes back and he sees his future wife starting from when she's like 6 years old. And so they have this relationship where at the beginning, he's telling her things about the future. So it sort of feels deterministic for her. But then it flips, because later when they meet in the real timeline, in her timeline, when he's in his 20s, the future him has not told her exactly when they'll meet or whatever. So then she has all these memories of him, but they're from his future. And so it's this crazy looping situation that really makes you think about determinism and free will. Unfortunately, the middle got a little bit muddled, and there kind of like wasn't a central conflict there for a minute. If the middle had been better, it would have been like 5 out of 5. This is one of the best books ever written. It's still really, really, really amazing. In the end, it hits really hard emotionally, but like it's an incredible romance story, but it's also an incredible just work of philosophy. And like, there's a reason that book was so popular. I was alive when that one came out, but it still felt like the same time. It was like, oh, great. I get to like visit the 90s when this is the thing we were all thinking about. So anyway, really, 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 really loved the book.
Yeah, I got to read that next. I mean, we kind of tried to split as much as we could so we could read the maximum possible, but that's the one that I'm going to read next. Because it sounded, I mean, you loved it so much. And I'm really into determinism. I would say personally, probably believe in it in general, especially after talking to Peter Watts and going through blindsight echopraxia, and is like at least semantically, biologically, it's basically determinism, because our bodies don't really we don't have too much choice in like what we want and what we gravitate towards. Anyways, so I'm interested in that as well. Love that determinism stuff. Okay. I love that determinism stuff. Who am I? Good God. Not smart enough to read this novel. Can we rank the top 3? Are we ready?
Well, I think that we should. So this is respectively, let's do our top 3. Do you want to go first or should I?
I can go first. My number 3 is 15 Lives of Harry August. That's my 3rd favorite on this list.
It's so good.
Loved
it's
it.
the book that started us down this whole adventure. I'm very glad it took us down this path.
Yeah.
It didn't make my list, but I like really thought about it a lot. Okay. My number 3 is Time and Again by Jack Finney.
Boo!
You're
crazy.
Yeah, for sure. It's just such a fun, it feels like it takes you back to the 1880s and the 1970s. The characters are amazing, and it just feels real. It's so cool to read this thing that feels real. Yeah, it stuck with me. Anyway, I loved it.
That's awesome.
Screw the haters.
We have a consensus number 2 for the first time ever, which is, say it with me, 2, 1, Slaughterhouse 5. By Kurt Vonnegut. This book just has meant a lot to me. So it goes as a personal philosophy of mine. I even got a Seicha shirt that has that on the back. I think you wore it
all the
one
time.
episode.
I love it. Yeah.
I have a friend who has a tattoo of So It Goes with a little tiny gravestone next to it. It's a great memento mori. So yeah, special novel. Okay, then I guess I'll do my number 1, which is Story of Your Life by Ted Chiang. That's a novel that really made me like viscerally feel different about the passage of time and the possibilities of the fourth dimension in a way that's hard to describe, I guess, because it's a feeling. I really feel that I believe that you could exist in the fourth dimension after reading that story. Not that our brains can handle that, so I never will feel it, but I believe that it exists somewhere.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, it's so good. Okay, I'm going to go with Night Watch by Terry Pratchett.
Okay.
It's funny. Terry Pratchett's such an incredible writer. It's funny. It's so heartwarming. It's serious. It's like, and I think it's also because I read it in this time. It's like, it's about a good cop, who's like, and there's like the bad, the bad guy with the secret police who's disappearing people, and he's just like not gonna stand for that, but he's also following orders. He's not like doing anything that he's not supposed to do. He's just like being an upstanding guy in a bad time. And that just like hit me hard in this moment where like, regardless of how you feel about any particular world ruler being a bad guy, I think we can all agree there's definitely some bad guys in charge around the world right now, but we don't agree on which ones. But yeah, it just feels like a time where it was just like a nice thing to be like, oh yeah, there are good guys and good guys can do good things. Plus crazy time travel stuff. Anyway, I loved it. I couldn't put it down.
That's awesome. We loved all of these books. We just thought it'd be fun to rank a bunch at the end. So you can't really go wrong here. And we waded through it. So hopefully you don't have to. See you next time for Cloud Atlas.
Yeah, see you then. Keep reading, everybody.